The alarm tore through my quarters at 3 in the morning, and I knew before my feet hit the cold metal floor that something had gone terribly wrong. I had served in the fleet for 22 years, and that particular alarm had only ever been used twice in my lifetime. Both times, worlds had burned. My name is Commander Elias Vance, and I was about to lead the largest group of warships that humanity had ever sent into the stars. I grabbed my uniform and ran toward the bridge of my ship, the Iron Dawn. My boots echoed in the empty corridor. Sailors rushed past me with wide eyes and pale faces. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. The sound of that alarm was enough. When I reached the bridge, my second-in-command, Lieutenant Clara Bennett, turned toward me with a data pad clutched in her hand. Her fingers were shaking, and Clara never shook. She had flown through 3 pirate skirmishes and a hull breach without blinking, but now her voice came out thin. She told me the message had come from the Zelari Coalition, our closest allies among the stars. They were a gentle species of scholars and engineers, known across the galaxy for their peaceful ways. They had helped humanity take its first steps into the wider universe, and in return we had shared our food, our music, and our friendship. Now the Zelari were asking for help, not trade, not advice, help. I read the message twice to be sure my eyes were not playing tricks on me. A swarm of creatures had come from beyond the edge of known space. The Zelari called them the Hollow Ones because their bodies were empty of thought and full only of hunger. They moved in clouds so thick that they blotted out the light of suns. 3 fleets from 3 different allied species had already tried to stop them. All 3 fleets were gone. Not damaged, not retreating, gone. The Zelari were next. Their home world held more than 12 billion living souls. Children, teachers, poets, farmers. The message ended with words that made my chest tighten. The coordinator of the Zelari Council had written, "Please send whatever you can spare. We know your people are new to the stars. Even a small number of ships would bring us hope." Clara looked up at me and asked what High Command was going to do. I told her I did not know yet. Then the main screen flickered, and the face of Admiral Helen Marsh appeared. She was a thin woman with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had commanded humanity's fleets for 9 years. When she spoke, every officer on the bridge stood a little straighter. She told me that the decision had already been made. Earth would not send a small group. Earth would not send a medium-sized force. Earth was sending the 3rd Fleet along with the 7th and parts of the 2nd. 240 warships in the first wave with more to follow. The Admiral's face was calm, but her eyes held a fire I had never seen before. She said to me, "Commander, our friends have called for help. We are going to answer them the way humans answer. Completely." I felt the words land in my chest like a stone dropping into deep water. 240 ships. The galaxy had never seen humanity move like this. The other species thought of us as loud, young, and rough around the edges. They joked that we brought too much muscle to every problem. They did not understand that for us, helping a friend in trouble was not a math problem. It was simply what you did. The Admiral signed off and the bridge fell into quiet activity. Officers at every station began preparing the ship for a long jump through folded space. Star charts lit up the main display. Engineers sent readiness reports. Fuel levels, weapon stocks, shield power, all of it flooded in like a rising tide. I walked to the tall window at the side of the bridge and looked out at the stars. Earth hung below us, blue and white, beautiful and fragile. I thought about my sister back in the coastal town where we grew up. I thought about her 2 children, who had sent me drawings last month of me as a space hero fighting monsters. I wondered if they knew that real monsters were out there now, and that their uncle was about to fly toward them. Clara came to stand beside me. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, "Do you think we will be enough?" I did not answer right away. I looked at the Earth and I looked at the stars beyond, and I thought about every story humanity had ever told about courage. Stories of people walking into dark forests to save lost children. Stories of sailors sailing into storms to rescue strangers. Stories of firefighters running up stairs when everyone else was running down. I told Clara the truth. I told her I did not know if we would be enough, but I told her something else too. I told her that humanity had a long history of showing up, of not turning away, of being there when others were afraid. Whatever waited for us out there, we would meet it as ourselves. The countdown began. Folded space drives across the whole fleet began to hum with power. I took my seat in the command chair and the leather was cool under my hands. Reports came in from ship after ship. The Nightingale was ready. The Bright Horizon was ready. The Silver Arrow, the Mountain Wolf, the Kind Word, the Strong Hand, all of them ready. Each name had been chosen by the crew that served on board. Humans like to give their ships names that meant something. Admiral Marsh's face appeared on the main screen again, this time broadcasting to the whole fleet. She spoke plainly, the way she always did. She said, "Fellow sailors of humanity, our friends are in danger. We are going to a place far from home. Some of us may not return, but we go because they asked us to and because we are the kind of people who come when we are called. Fly well, fight smart, look after each other, and when this is over, we will all come home together." She did not need to give a long speech. She did not need to wave a flag. We knew why we were going. Across the fleet, I could imagine sailors and soldiers and pilots all sitting in their stations, thinking of their own reasons. Someone's mother had once been saved by a stranger. Someone's grandfather had pulled a neighbor from a burning house. Someone's child had been helped by a teacher who did not have to stay late. We were made from a long chain of small kindnesses, and now we were being asked to be kind in a very large way. The navigation officer, a young man named Peter Hall, turned to me. His voice was steady. "Commander, folded space is open. All ships report ready." I gave the order to jump. Outside the window, the stars stretched into long lines of white, and then the universe folded around us like a blanket and we were gone. Inside folded space, time moved strangely. We would travel for 3 days to reach Zelari territory, but it would feel like only a few hours to us. I used the time well. I studied every report on the hollow ones. I watched the recordings taken by the fleets that had tried to stop them. What I saw shook me. The creatures were not ships in the way we thought of ships. They were living things the size of buildings, with thick shells and many limbs. They did not seem to feel fear. They moved together in patterns like a single mind controlling many bodies. They ate metal, rock, and flesh alike. A single swarm could strip a planet of every living thing in a matter of weeks. I watched the last moments of the Brel Coalition fleet. Their ships had been beautiful, long and silver with delicate wings. They had fired their weapons bravely. The hollow ones had swallowed them whole. I watched until the recording ended in static. Then I sat in the dark for a long time. Clara found me there and asked if I wanted to eat something. I realized I had not eaten in almost a day. We walked to the small officers' mess together. A few other officers were there, quietly eating and talking. Someone had put on an old song from Earth, something soft with a slow guitar. I listened to it while I ate a bowl of warm soup, and I thought about how strange it was that we carried these small human things with us across the stars. Songs, stories, soup. By the third day, the fleet began to prepare for exit. Tension climbed through every deck. Technicians checked and rechecked every system. Pilots sat in their fighters and ran through drills in their minds. I stood on the bridge with my crew around me, and I felt a strange calm settle over me. We had come a long way. Now it was time to do what we had come to do. The navigation officer counted down. 3, 2, 1. The fleet slipped out of folded space, and what I saw on the main screen made the whole bridge fall silent. Before us was the Zelari home system. Before us was the enemy. And before us was the moment that would change everything for humanity and for every species that shared the stars with us. I stood up from my chair, and I gave the first order of the fight that was about to begin. The light from the Zelari star poured through the bridge windows like pale gold, but what I saw in that light made my stomach turn cold. The once bright planet of Zelari Prime was wrapped in dark clouds of moving shapes. From orbit, they looked like storms. Up close, they were armies. I keyed the wide fleet channel, every ship hold formation, weapons hot, shields to full strength, wait for my command. My voice sounded steady, which surprised me. Inside, my heart was beating like a drum. The comm officer, a woman named Helen Brooks, turned from her station. "Commander," she said, "we are being hailed by the Zelari flagship." I told her to put it through. The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to Coordinator Thassel Ven, the leader of the Zelari people. I had met him once at a trade meeting 3 years ago. Back then, his skin had been a soft, healthy blue, and his eyes had sparkled with curiosity. Now his skin was dull gray, and his eyes were sunken. He looked like a man who had not slept in weeks. He stared at his screen for a long moment. Then he spoke in our language, which he had learned to honor us. "Commander Vance," he said, "my sensors must be broken. They show more than 200 human warships in this system." I told him his sensors were working just fine. I told him we were the first wave, and that more were coming behind us. He did not speak for almost a full minute. When he finally did, his voice cracked. "We thought perhaps 10 ships," he said, "perhaps 20 at most. We did not know how to ask for more." I told him that humans did not need to be asked twice. If a friend was in trouble, we came with everything we had. Behind him, I could see the faces of other Zelari officers. Some of them were crying. Others were holding each other. One very old Zelari, who must have been a senior advisor, placed his long fingers over his eyes and bowed his head. I did not know then, but I learned later, that this was the Zelari way of saying thank you when words were not enough. Clara leaned toward me and spoke quietly. "Sir, the enemy has noticed us." I turned to the tactical screen. The dark clouds around the planet were shifting. Thousands of hollow ones were breaking away from the world they had been attacking and turning toward us. They moved faster than I would have thought possible for creatures so large. I ordered the fleet into defensive formation. 240 ships spread out like a great wall of steel between the Zelari refugee convoys and the coming swarm. Our largest vessels, the battleships, took the center. The cruisers and destroyers formed the wings. Carrier ships held the rear, their fighter bays already opening. I watched the enemy come. They filled the main screen from edge to edge. There were so many of them that my sensors had trouble counting. The numbers kept climbing. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, more. I thought about running. For one brief moment, I wondered if we should fall back, regroup, wait for the rest of the fleet. Then I thought about the 12 billion Zelari on the planet below. I thought about children looking up at the sky. I thought about the coordinator's sunken eyes. I gave the order, "All ships fire at will." The first volley from our fleet was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. 240 ships firing all their weapons at once. Long beams of blue light cut across space. Metal projectiles flew in swarms of their own, each one the size of a small house, moving at speeds that turned them into lightning. Missiles streaked from launch tubes in countless numbers. The front edge of the enemy swarm broke apart. Thousands of hollow ones were struck down in the first minute. Their shells cracked open. Their dark forms spun away into empty space. For the first time since the hollow ones had appeared, something was pushing them back. But there were so many of them, so many, they kept coming. Our fighters launched in great waves. Pilots in small, fast ships darted between the massive enemy creatures, firing and dodging and firing again. I watched on my monitors as young men and women I had trained with flew into that storm with nothing but courage and skill. One fighter, call sign Magpie, took down 8 hollow ones before his fuel ran low and he had to return to the carrier. Another, call sign River, used the shell of a destroyed enemy to hide behind, then popped out and fired at point-blank range. The things humans could do when pushed surprised even me. An hour into the fight, we had destroyed tens of thousands of the enemy. We had lost 3 ships, 3. The destroyer Kindword had been overwhelmed on our left flank. The cruiser Blue Valley had suffered a direct hit to its power core. The escort ship Little Harbor had gone down protecting a Zelari refugee vessel. I felt each loss in my chest like a hand squeezing my heart. Every ship had a name. Every crew had families waiting back home. Clara brought me reports while I commanded. Zelari refugee ships were reaching the protected zone behind our lines. Thousands of small pods and transports, packed with survivors, were slipping past us and heading for the edge of the system, where larger transport ships would take them to safer places. Coordinator Thassel then came back on the screen. His face was different now. The dull gray was still there, but something had returned to his eyes. Hope, I realized. That was what hope looked like on a Zelari face. He said to me, "Commander, my people are moving. My people are escaping. We had given up. You have given us something back." I did not have time for a long reply. I simply said, "Save as many as you can. We will hold the line." 2 hours into the fight, a warning sounded. My sensor officer, a man named Owen Clark, turned to me with a pale face. "Sir, something massive is approaching. Something much bigger than the others." I asked him how big. He swallowed. "Commander," he said, "it is the size of a small moon." On the main screen, a dark shape rose from the far side of the Zelari system. It was round and ridged and covered in strange growths. It was not one creature. It was many creatures melted together into one enormous thing. Later, we would learn that the Zelari called it a mother shape, a kind of queen that controlled the swarms. When it arrived, the hollow ones fought harder, faster, smarter. I felt fear then, real fear, the kind that sits in your throat. I pushed it down the way my old training officer had taught me. "Fear is a visitor," he used to say. "You let it in, you say hello, and then you show it the door." I called the fleet. "All captains, listen to me. The enemy has brought something terrible. We are going to meet it. We did not come across the stars to turn around now. Hold the line. Trust your crews. Trust each other." Across the fleet, captains answered one by one. The cruiser Morning Star was ready. The battleship Iron Hope was ready. The destroyer Quiet Road was ready. Their voices came through my earpiece like a chorus, calm and certain. The mother shape began to glow. Energy built inside it. The Zelari records had warned us about this. It was gathering power for a massive strike that could wipe out entire groups of ships in one moment. We had maybe 90 seconds before it fired. I made a choice then that I will remember for the rest of my life. I ordered a small group of our fastest ships to fly directly at the mother shape. 30 vessels, led by the cruiser Morning Star under Captain Rebecca Lowe. Their job was to draw the creature's attention and force it to turn, buying us time to set up a bigger attack. Captain Lowe answered without hesitation. "Understood, Commander. We will bring it to you." She did not ask for more details. She did not protest. She just went. I watched those 30 ships break away from our formation and accelerate toward the massive enemy. They looked so small against it, like a handful of birds flying at a mountain. My hands gripped the arms of my chair so tightly that my fingers ached. The mother shape noticed them. It turned. Its energy buildup paused as it focused on the new threat. Captain Lowe's ships opened fire with everything they had. They split into smaller groups, swarming around the giant creature like bees around a bear. In that moment, I gave the order for our main strike. The whole fleet shifted position. Our battleships lined up. Targeting data flooded from ship to ship. Every gun on every human vessel focused on one point on the mother shape, where its shell was thinnest. Clara counted down for me. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. The universe seemed to hold its breath. Then every heavy weapon in the human fleet fired at the same time. The combined beams and shells and missiles struck the mother shape like a single giant spear. The creature convulsed. Great pieces of its shell broke away. Dark fluid poured into space. It did not die, not yet, but it was wounded, it was hurt, and for the first time it tried to pull back. I ordered the fleet to advance. Keep firing, do not let it retreat, drive it away from the planet. Captain Lowe's small group was still circling the giant, still harassing it. I could see on my screen that several of her ships had been lost, but she herself was still flying, still fighting, still leading. I felt proud of her in a way that went past words. The battle ground on, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5. My crew worked without stopping. Coffee was brought to our stations. Some ate sandwiches one-handed while operating controls with the other. Nobody complained. Nobody asked to rest. By the 6th hour, the tide had turned. The hollow ones were breaking apart. Without the full focus of the mother shape, their coordinated movements grew sloppy. Our fighters picked them off in hundreds. Our larger ships swept through their formations like plows through a field. And then, finally, word came from the rear of the system. The rest of the fleet had arrived. Not the 240 I had brought. 500 more ships, led by Admiral Marsh herself. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. When the Zelari sensor officers saw those new signatures, one of them fainted. Another began to laugh, a shaky, relieved laugh that turned into tears. Coordinator Thassel Ven, watching from his own bridge, whispered a word in his language that his translator did not catch. I asked him later what it meant. He told me it meant, the sun has come back. Admiral Marsh's ships joined the fight. The swarm, wounded and leaderless, could not stand against the full weight of humanity's answer. The mother shape, bleeding and broken, turned and fled toward the edge of the system. We let it go. There was no more time to chase. We needed to save the world below. As the last of the enemy scattered, I finally allowed myself to breathe deeply. My hands were shaking. My uniform was soaked with sweat. Clara stood beside me, her face streaked with tears she had not had time to wipe away. On the main screen, Zelari Prime was still there, still wounded, still hurting, but still alive. Coordinator Thassel then opened a channel. He did not speak right away. He simply bowed his head. Behind him, every Zelari in his command center did the same. It was the deepest honor his species could give. I returned the gesture slowly, feeling the full weight of what we had done and what we had almost lost. The first fight was over, but as I looked at my damaged ship, at my weary crew, at the stars beyond, I knew something else. This was only the beginning. What humanity had just done would echo across the galaxy, and not everyone would be happy about it. The silence after the long fight felt strange. For hours, my ears had been filled with alarms, orders, explosions, and the voices of my crew calling out targets. Now, there was only the soft hum of the ship and the distant clicks of damaged systems being repaired. I stood on the bridge and rubbed my eyes. Every part of me ached, but I could not rest yet. There was too much still to do. Clara brought me a cup of hot tea. She had started making tea for me during long missions years ago, and now it felt like a ritual. The warm cup pressed into my palms, and I nodded my thanks. She looked exhausted. Everyone looked exhausted. But there were also small smiles on some faces, the kind of smiles that come after doing something hard and doing it right. Reports flowed in from across the fleet. We had lost 28 ships in total. 28. Each loss was a wound I would carry. 1,140 human sailors had given their lives to hold that line. Their names were already being gathered by Admiral Marsh's staff. A memorial would be held later, but right now, the rest of us had a job to finish. The Zelari refugee ships were still streaming out from the planet. Their smaller vessels were packed far beyond normal limits. Some transports meant for 1,000 passengers were carrying 5,000 or 6,000. I could imagine the crowded corridors, parents holding children, elders clutching photographs of homes they might never see again. Admiral Marsh's flagship, the Forward Belle, drew close to my own ship. She opened a private channel. Her face appeared on my personal monitor, and for the first time I could remember, she looked tired. "Well done, Elias," she said. "Tell your crew the same from me. You held a line that should not have been holdable." I told her the credit belonged to everyone who had come. She gave a small nod, and then her voice changed, becoming more serious. "Elias," she said, "we have a new problem. Not the hollow ones. Something else." I sat up straighter. She explained that several other governments across the known galaxy were already sending messages. Some were full of thanks. Others were full of complaints. The Krell Union had called humanity's response excessive. The Vorthan Circle had said the use of such heavy weapons set a dangerous example. Even the peaceful Morali flock had sent a careful, worried note, asking whether humanity planned to keep fleets of this size ready at all times. I shook my head. We had come to save a friend. Now we were being questioned for saving that friend too well. I asked the Admiral what she wanted me to do. She told me to focus on helping the Zelari for now and to leave the politics to her. But she warned me that soon I would need to answer questions in front of the Galactic Accord, the great council of species that governed matters between worlds. After she ended the call, I sat alone for a while in my small quarters behind the bridge. I thought about my father, a farmer who had taught me that helping a neighbor was never wrong. He had a saying, "If a man is drowning, you do not measure the size of your rope. You throw the whole rope. You can always coil it back up later. I went back to the bridge. Coordinator Thassel Venn had invited me to come down to his world personally. He wanted to show me what we had saved. Admiral Marsh gave me permission. I took a small shuttle with Clara and two of my senior officers, Lieutenant Aaron Hill and Medical Chief Grace Porter. The trip down was quiet. Zelari Prime was a world of soft green seas and tall white cities. Even from orbit, I could see the damage. Entire coastal regions had been scorched. A vast inland plain was covered in dark ash where hollow ones had feasted before being driven away. Yet most of the cities still stood. Most of the forests were still green. We landed at the main spaceport of the Zelari capital. The moment the shuttle door opened, I stepped out into a crowd. Thousands upon thousands of Zelari had gathered. They were quiet, not cheering, not shouting. They simply stood there looking at us. Many held pictures of loved ones. Others held small flowers. An old Zelari woman walked up to me slowly, her long fingers trembling, and placed a single blue flower in my hand. She said something in her own language. Clara's translator caught it. She had said, "You came. That was all, you came." I could not speak for a moment. I just held the flower and nodded. A path opened through the crowd, and we were led to a large open hall where Coordinator Thassel Venn waited. Around him stood the surviving members of the Zelari Council. Many were wounded. One had lost an arm. Another had bandages across her face. But they all rose when we entered, and they all bowed. The coordinator spoke plainly. He told us the Zelari people would never forget what humanity had done. He offered us trade agreements, shared technology, and any other gift we desired. I looked at Clara, and I could see her thinking the same thing I was. I told him we did not come for gifts. We came because they had called. We asked only one thing. We asked that the Zelari people remember. Remember that help had come when they needed it. Remember that friendship was not measured in good times but in hard times. And if one day another people called for help, we asked that the Zelari answer the way we had answered them. The coordinator pressed his hand over his chest. He told me that humanity had just taught his people a lesson they would carry for 1,000 years. After the meeting, he led me to a window that looked out over the city. I could see rescue teams working in the distance. Zelari medics, human medics, and engineers from both our peoples were moving together through the rubble. It was a strange and beautiful sight. Two species working side by side as if they had always done so. Back on my ship, I called a meeting of my senior officers. We had received word from Admiral Marsh. I was being called to the Galactic Accord. A formal hearing had been set. The Krell Union and 3 other governments had filed a joint motion. They were accusing humanity of bringing too much force into a shared region of space. And they wanted limits placed on our military. Clara was furious. I had never seen her so angry. She asked how anyone could complain about what we had done. The Zelari had been dying. The galaxy had been watching. If anyone else had done something, we would not have had to come at all. I told her I agreed. But I also told her that anger would not help us in that hearing. We needed to be calm. We needed to be clear. And we needed to speak for all the humans who had served, especially those who had given their lives. 2 days later, I stood in my dress uniform on the bridge of the Iron Dawn as we prepared to travel to the Accord station. The ship had been patched up enough to fly. My crew had cleaned her until she shone. They wanted her to look her best when we arrived. I understood that feeling. A ship is a home. A ship is a family. Before we left, something unexpected happened. Ships from across the galaxy began to arrive in Zelari space. Not warships, rescue ships, hospital ships, supply vessels. The Brel Coalition, who had lost an entire fleet to the Hollow Ones, sent their last remaining medical vessels to help the Zelari. The Ilyari Republic sent food. The Koptak refugees, who humanity had helped years earlier, sent everything they had. And to my great surprise, ships came from places I had never expected. The small world of Bren sent a single transport full of supplies. Its captain, a short, round being named Diko Peth, docked with our flagship and asked to speak with me personally. He had traveled for weeks to reach us. He told me that 12 years ago, a human ship had saved his daughter from a pirate attack. He had been waiting all this time for a chance to repay that kindness. He had brought everything his small world could spare. These moments reminded me of something important. Kindness carried across the stars. Small acts came back years later in unexpected ways. Humanity's pattern of showing up had built a network of quiet friends we had not even known we had. As we left Zelari space, the planet filled our rear viewers. The green and white globe hung peacefully below drifting clouds. I thought of everyone down there rebuilding. I thought of the old woman who had given me the blue flower. I had kept that flower. It sat in a small cup of water in my quarters. I did not know how long it would last, but I wanted to see it every day until it faded. The trip to the Accord station took 4 days. I used the time to prepare. I read every rule, every past hearing, every report. I studied the laws of the Galactic Accord until my eyes burned. Clara and my other senior officers helped. We built a case, not to defend ourselves, but to tell the truth plainly. The station itself was a marvel. A ring of silver and blue metal spinning slowly around a small star. Ships from every member species were docked there. The hallways were filled with beings of every shape and size. Tall, thin Morali with feathered wings. Short, wide Koptak with 4 arms. The spiked, blue-skinned Krell. The long, snake-like Vorthons. And now humans. I felt eyes on me wherever I walked. Some stared with curiosity, some with respect, some with anger. I kept my back straight and my face calm. I thought of every sailor who had served under me. I was carrying them now, all of them, into this hearing. The great chamber of the Accord was a huge circular room. Hundreds of species had seats arranged in rows that rose up like a bowl. In the center was a low platform where speakers stood. I took my place on that platform, alone, in my uniform with no notes. Admiral Marsh had offered to speak for me. I had asked to speak for myself. The head of the session was a Morali elder named Rel and Ta. She opened the hearing with polite words. Then the Krell ambassador, a tall being with bright blue skin, stood to give the opening argument against us. He spoke for a long time. He used big words. He said humanity had broken balance. He said we had frightened other species. He said the weapons we had used were too strong and that we should agree to limits. I listened to every word. I did not interrupt. When he finished, others rose to speak. Some agreed with him. Some did not. The Zelari coordinator who had traveled to speak for us gave a powerful statement. He reminded the Accord that his people had called for help and that only one species had answered with their full heart. Finally, it was my turn. I stood at the center platform of the great chamber, and for a moment I did not speak. I let my eyes move across the rows of beings looking down at me. Hundreds of species, thousands of eyes, some angry, some curious, some thoughtful. I felt the weight of the moment settle into me, and then I began. I did not use big words. I did not try to sound grand. I spoke the way my father had spoken, the way my grandmother had spoken, the way ordinary humans speak when they are saying something that matters. I told them my name. I told them that 3 weeks ago I had been asleep in my quarters when an alarm had woken me up. I told them about the message from the Zelari. I told them about the coordinator's sunken eyes on my screen. I told them about reading the words, "Please send whatever you can spare." I paused and I looked directly at the Krell ambassador. I asked him a simple question. If a child were drowning in a lake in front of him and he had a boat, how much of that boat would he offer? Would he send half the boat, a third? Or would he send the whole boat and pull the child out? He did not answer. I did not expect him to. I continued. I told the Accord that the Hollow Ones had killed 3 allied fleets before we arrived. I told them that 12 billion Zelari lived on the planet below the fight. I told them that if we had sent a small force, we would have died with everyone else. I told them we had not come to show off. We had come because there was a job to do, and we had brought enough to do it. I spoke about the people who had died under my command. I named a few of them. Captain Benjamin Holt of the cruiser Blue Valley, who had been a father of 3. Engineer First Class Maria Webb of the destroyer Kind Word, who had been engaged to be married. Pilot Jacob Ford, who had taken down 12 enemy creatures before his fighter was destroyed. I told the Accord that these people had not died for glory. They had died because a friend had called, and we had chosen to answer. Then I said something I had been thinking about for days. I told them that humanity was new to the stars. I told them we had much to learn from older species. I told them we respected the ways of the Accord. But I said we would never apologize for helping a friend in need. Not now. Not ever. The chamber was silent when I finished. I could hear my own heart beating. I stepped back from the platform and returned to my seat. A long debate followed. Many species spoke. Some supported the Krell motion. Others spoke against it. The Zelari rose as a group and bowed toward the human section. The old Bren captain, Deco Peth, stood and gave a short, shaking speech about how humans had saved his daughter 12 years ago. The Koptak ambassador told the story of how humans had welcomed refugees from his world when no one else would. One by one, species after species stood to share their memories of humanity. Most were small stories. A human ship that had fixed a broken generator on a far colony. A human doctor who had stayed behind to help when a plague hit a small world. A human teacher who had volunteered to learn an obscure language to help a struggling village. None of these stories had been famous. None had been reported across the stars. They had been quiet acts, done and then forgotten. Except they had not been forgotten. Everyone had been remembered by the people who had been helped. Admiral Marsh sat beside me. I saw her eyes shine. She whispered to me that she had not known about half of these stories. I told her I had not either. It seemed that humans across the galaxy, going about our lives, had quietly built a reputation we had never planned. We had been kind in small ways in 1,000 places, and now, when it mattered, those small kindnesses were standing up for us. The vote came at the end of the day. The Krell motion to limit human military strength was put forward. I held my breath. The count began. Species after species voted. At first, the yes votes and the no votes seemed even. Then the balance tipped. More and more no votes came in. The motion failed, not just by a small number, by a large one. By the end, only a handful of species had voted with the Krell. The chamber filled with quiet sounds of surprise. The Krell ambassador sat down slowly. He did not look at me. I did not look at him. There was no point. The head of the session, Elder Rel and Ta, spoke. She closed the motion. Then she did something unusual. She said the Accord would like to offer humanity a permanent seat on the Security Council. This council, I knew, was the inner group that decided on matters of defense for the whole known galaxy. Only 7 species had seats. Now we were being offered the 8th. I looked at Admiral Marsh. She nodded. She rose and accepted the offer on behalf of Earth. The chamber gave a gentle, murmuring sound of approval. It was the Accord version of applause. When the session ended, I walked out of the chamber into a wide hallway. Many beings came to speak with me. Some wanted to shake my hand, which was a human custom others had learned. The Zelari coordinator found me and pressed his long fingers over his chest again. He told me that his people would teach the story of the Iron Dawn to their children for 1,000 years. I thanked him, but I told him it was not the story of one ship. It was the story of every ship, and every sailor, and every person back home on Earth who had supported the mission. He nodded kindly. As I walked toward the docking bay where my ship waited, a small figure stepped into my path. It was the Bren captain, Deco Peth. He had tears in his small eyes. He did not say anything. He simply reached up and pressed a small carved stone into my hand. It was smooth and cool. On it was carved the image of a human ship with a small Bren child beside it. A gift. A thank you. A memory kept for 12 years and finally given. I closed my hand around it and thanked him. I told him I would carry it with me always. Outside the station, my ship hung in its dock, the Iron Dawn. Her hull was marked with new patches where the fight had torn her. Her nameplate had been polished until it shone. My crew stood waiting at the airlock. When I came on board, they did not cheer. They simply nodded one by one as I passed. I nodded back. No words were needed. We left the Accord station that evening. As we pulled away, other human ships of the fleet joined us. We did not head straight home. Admiral Marsh had ordered a short stop at Zelari Prime first. There was one more thing to do. A memorial service had been planned for the fallen, 1,140 names. The service was held on a small green hill outside the Zelari capital. The Zelari had built a white stone wall that stretched across the hill. Every name had been carved into that wall with care. Zelari families stood in quiet rows, each one holding a small blue flower, ready to be placed at the wall after the service. Admiral Marsh spoke. She did not shout, she did not raise her voice. She simply read every name, all 1,140. It took more than 2 hours. Every name was read slowly, clearly, with respect. After each name, a Zelari stepped forward and placed a flower on the wall. When it was done, the wall was covered in blue, a river of small flowers, a promise that none would be forgotten. I stood with my crew and listened. I thought of Captain Lowe of the Morning Star, who had led her 30 ships against the Mother Shape. She had survived. She stood not far from me, her uniform sharp, her face quiet. I thought of young Peter Hall, my navigation officer, who had steered us through folded space with steady hands. He stood beside Clara now. I thought of Helen Brooks, who had carried every comm message without breaking her focus. After the service, we flew home. The trip back to Earth took 4 days. I spent most of it walking through the ship, talking to my crew. I asked about their families, their plans, their hopes. I listened more than I spoke. A good commander always listens more than he speaks. Earth came into view on the 5th day, blue and white with its small moon spinning nearby. The whole fleet came out of folded space together. The first sight that greeted us was a wall of ships, not warships, civilian ships, thousands of them. Every private craft that could fly had come out to meet the fleet. They formed long lines across the orbital lanes, their lights shining in greeting. Below on Earth, people were gathered in every city. My ship's comm system began picking up transmissions from the planet. Broadcasts, news reports, music being played, children singing. I keyed the fleet channel and told every ship to open external comm feeds. Let every sailor hear what their home sounded like. We docked in orbit around Earth. Shuttles took us down to the surface in groups. When I landed, my family was waiting at the base gate, my sister, my niece and nephew, who were older now than when they had drawn me as a space hero. My old father, still tall, still strong, though his hair was whiter than I remembered. He did not speak when I walked up to him. He just wrapped his arms around me. I held him for a long time. He smelled like the farm, like fresh cut grass and old cloth. When we finally stepped apart, he looked at me with eyes that were wet but steady. He said, "You did right, son." I told him I had tried. He said, "No, you did." My sister laughed and cried at the same time. My niece and nephew, now older and taller, gave me careful hugs as if they were not sure if I was still theirs. I told them I was. I told them I would always be. That evening, I walked with my father along the edge of our old family farm. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and gold. Crickets sang in the tall grass. He did not ask me about the fight. He asked me about the people I had met. The Zelari coordinator, the old woman with the blue flower, the Bren captain with the carved stone. I told him every story I could remember. He listened. When I was done, he was quiet for a while. Then he said something I have never forgotten. He said, "A family is small. A people is bigger. But kindness, son, kindness has no borders. When you were kind, you showed them who we are, all of us." In the weeks that followed, life began to return to normal, though nothing would ever be quite the same. I was given command of a new ship, a larger one, a flagship-class vessel. I named her the Blue Flower, after the gift the old Zelari woman had given me. My new crew did not question the name. They seemed to understand. Humanity's place in the galaxy had changed. We were no longer the new kids. We were not yet elders, but we were respected. We were listened to. When we spoke, others paid attention. And when we asked for help in return, one day we would find that help came willingly. A year later, a second call came. Not from the Zelari this time, from the small world of Bren. Pirates had attacked their main colony. Captain Deco Peth himself sent the message, and it came directly to me. I was ready within hours, so was the fleet. So was Clara, who now commanded her own ship. So was Captain Lowe, whose Morning Star had been rebuilt and improved. We went. We helped. We came home. Soon after, a call came from the Coptac, then from a small moon in the outer rim that had never even contacted the Accord before. Each time, humanity answered. Each time we came with enough to do the job and not one ship more. We had learned the balance. We did not want to frighten, but we did not want to fail. The hollow ones did not return for many years. When they did, it was at the other side of the galaxy, far from any populated systems, and they were met by a fleet that included human, Zelari, Bren, Koptak, and even some Krell ships. Yes, even Krell. Time changes minds. Over the years, the Krell had come to see things differently. Their young generation, especially, had grown up hearing the stories of what humans had done. They had wanted to be part of the new galaxy, not apart from it. I retired from the fleet when my hair had turned as gray as my father's. Admiral Marsh had retired a few years before me. Clara took my place as commander of the Blue Flower. She had more than earned it. I went home to the farm. My father had passed away peacefully in his sleep the winter before. My sister and her family lived in the old house now. I built a small cottage nearby. My niece and nephew, now grown, visited often. Sometimes other retired officers came by. Captain Lowe, Lieutenant Hill, Chief Porter. We would sit by the fire in the evenings and tell old stories. Sometimes we would sit in silence. That was fine too. The blue flower from the old Zelari woman had long since faded, but I had pressed it into a book and kept it safe. The carved stone from Captain Deco Peth sat on my kitchen table. The patch I had worn on my old uniform from the Iron Dawn hung on the wall by my door. Every morning, I saw it when I went out to tend my small garden. One warm evening, near the end of a long summer, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea. The sky above was full of stars. I could pick out the bright point that was the Zelari home system. I could pick out the small, red dot of Bren. I could pick out dozens of others, each one a place where humans had gone, helped, and been remembered. A shuttle came down to the field beside my cottage. It was not expected, but I was not surprised. A young woman stepped out. She wore a fleet uniform. She was a junior officer, fresh from the academy, newly posted to her first ship. She walked up to my porch with a nervous smile and asked if I was Commander Elias Vance. I told her I was. She said she had been sent with a message. A new mission was being planned. A distant world had called for help. The commanders had asked her before she left to stop by and say hello. Just hello. No action required. I smiled. I told her to tell them I sent my best. I told her to fly well, to fight smart, and to look after her crew. I told her one more thing. I told her to remember that every small kindness she did in her life, no matter how unimportant it seemed, would come back to her. Maybe not today, maybe not for many years, but it would come back. She listened carefully, her young eyes wide. Then she thanked me, bowed her head slightly, and returned to her shuttle. I watched her fly up into the dark sky, becoming smaller and smaller until she was just another bright point among the stars. I sat on my porch for a long time. I thought about my father. I thought about my crew, living and gone. I thought about the old Zelari woman and the Bren captain and the young girl who had just left. I thought about my species. We were not perfect. We had our faults. We argued. We made mistakes. But when a friend called, we came. We came with everything we had, and we would keep coming as long as there were humans and stars. I finished my tea. The night grew cooler. The stars turned slowly above me, and I smiled because I knew that somewhere out there, right at that moment, a human ship was flying toward a world in need. Somewhere a sailor was answering a call. Somewhere a small kindness was being done in a quiet place, and one day, years from now, it would come back in a way no one could yet imagine. That is who we are. That is who we have always been. And that, I believe, is who we will always be. The stars wheeled on. The night was kind, and I was at peace.